Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick. So we've actually just finished recording the episode. So Silvia, for people who are just joining us now, what have they got in store for the next hour?
It was such a high energy conversation, Richard. It's hard to come up with just a couple bullet points, but let me take a stab at it. So the first is we explore why traditional or conventional practices in prospecting and networking fall short using brain-friendly and brain science-backed principles. So that's the first layer that we approached and tackle. And then to support a contrast state or the generation of something better, we then looked at the in-group, out-group dynamics that most of our brains actually engage in and how to break through being stuck in the out-group categorization in the eyes of our prospective clients or even our current clients. So that's the second tidbit that we got into. And then third piece that I would really love for your listeners to maybe engage with us on further is this notion of, so what do we do about all this, right? How do we successfully land our messaging in such a way that would invite a positive reaction or response from those that we want to engage more of, and really turn those service level conversations into trust building, trust garnering, credibility building type conversations.
Amazing. Yeah, I would say on top of that this is about taking that research piece that everyone knows they have to do in selling to a completely different level, but actually in very simple and practical ways, which will change massively your positioning from everyone else in the market today who's trying to do the old playbooks and the traditional ways. This is a masterclass. So without further ado, let's roll the VT. Hello and welcome to Making Revenue Tick. I am very excited because I'm joined by someone that I've only spoken to a couple of times, but I have an amazing affinity to straight away, Silvia Li. Silvia, how are you?
Great, Richard. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here and to converse with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. We got introduced by probably the most successful and prolific introducer that I've ever met, Stephen Oman. And he said, you have to speak to Silvia. You have to speak to her. So I was already going into the conversation with you with high expectations because he doesn't do dud referrals. But then we just talked about anything and everything. And I got all of your energy. And I really believe in that stuff, like we were talking about in the green room. But there's also some stuff that you're doing that's incredibly cool and very innovative in a world that's struggling to just find out what's going to go and be successful. So we talked about a topic that would be a wonderful thing for us to do a masterclass on, a version of the Making Revenue Tick podcast, which was about how founders and how startups can go and capture that market share with ICP clients and then convert that into demand. So why is that topic one that you care
Richard, let's just start with the reality of our days, right? So I'm sure when you open your inbox in the morning, you're inundated with all kinds of emails, right? From people you know, from people you don't know, yet who want to know you. And let me ask you, how many of those messages do you actually open and pay heed to?
So I open a very small fraction. I pay heed to 0.
Great. And why is that?
They're not relevant. I think that a huge amount of them are it's just AI, and a lot of them I know it's like the sequence. I go, what? That's a really familiar like subject line that sounds like they know me. I look at it and it's the third email as part of a sequence, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious me, not again. So a huge amount of it is just I am on someone's list. There's no real personalization, or it's this horrible fake personalization of like, hey, you went to Bournemouth University. What was summer prom like? By the way, we sell this. And I'm like, ah. So it's just thoughtless spam rather than stuff that I go, oh my gosh, you got into my brain.
Precisely that, right? So we are inundated with hundreds of thousands of bits of information every second, every minute, right? Like, and multiply that, right, across the 8 to 10, 12 hours we're in our home offices or physical offices. And I just think about how right now in the age of information, connection, right, human to human connection is woefully under indexed. So that's why I'm so excited to talk about this topic of how do we garner attention from the people that we want to engage with. Now, I'm of the belief that if we want to see changes in how others respond to us, it has to start with us, right? Really examining how we're showing up or not showing up. What are our behaviors and habits and actions that are generating the kinds of results that we're seeing? So this is a really timely topic in that I just kind of go in the age of so much information overload, cognitive overload. There is an opportunity for us to restore or go back to the more humanistic elements. And a lot of that does start with looking at and understanding better how our brains work as human beings.
I love that, because I think most people go to tactics, right? They're like, "Oh, we just need to change that subject line. We need to just change that bit of copy." It's a very tactical solution. Let's go
Hmm.
and look at the data and see how we can slightly optimize it. But you're talking about much more of a fundamental mindset
Correct.
shift.
Precisely that. In that, right, it really is hard to connect with someone if we don't even have an understanding of how we ourselves work, right? So really enhancing that level of self-awareness and then coupling it with um, science-backed nuggets about how people would react or respond or behave if given a certain stimulus. So that's what we're going to unpack together today in the context of demand generation, right? How do we invite more of that positive response, more of those positive lean in moments, if you will, from our ideal prospective clients?
Amazing, amazing. I definitely would love to talk to you. We'll definitely do it in this conversation about demand capture versus demand creation. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that topic. But let's before we get into that, what I loved about the first conversation that we had is that not only are you incredibly passionate, and I just love people who love what they do. It's infectious, and you have an infectious personality. But you've got a huge amount of experience and a love of the science and the data that drives all of this and the psychology. You think about things much more deeply than many people that I've spoken to. So for people who don't already have the pleasure of knowing you, maybe this is their first time hearing you, give us a bit of an idea around who you are and the journey that you've been on to reach where you are today with the mindset that you have.
Yeah, professionally, Richard, I founded BrainSells Global. So that's SELLS, not CELOS. BrainSells Global about 7 years ago after being a frontline seller and a frontline sales leader myself for over 18 years. So as I share with you in the green room, I have my batch my vault of lessons learned from being in the field myself and coaching and guiding those that are in the field still. And I was a student, a perpetual student of how people interact, how people behave in certain situations with certain stimuli or triggers, some might call. So I have a vault of real life scenarios in my brain the lessons contained therein that I'm so eager to help, others learn as well before they find themselves at a point of no return or at right how to navigate through really tricky situations or even prevent themselves from having to enter really tricky situations or low energy situations. So the passion comes from me having been on the receiving end of really negative responses, rejection, which is actually very hard to face, that most of us even though we might say we're thick skinned. Rejection is actually very damaging to the brain. So, and to our need for social status. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. So all this to say, I want to make business development and sales success much more achievable, much more democratic, to be honest. And frankly, just add more ease and joy into what we do as either founders, right, as subject matter experts who have business development responsibilities,
Sure.
and those of us who are right selling full time as corporate account executives and account managers. I just want to elevate those that are in that profession, see more success, co-create more, better, different with those that they have the privilege of serving. And so professionally, that's my journey. I'll say my student status as right, someone who is ever eager to unlock the elements that would lead to successful, more higher energy, joyful interactions started when I was 10 years old. So I moved with my family from Hong Kong, British Hong Kong at the time, to Cincinnati, Ohio. And I found myself in a world, in a community where few people knew about my world,
Mm.
the world that I came from. And I had a lot of assumptions about their world coming into it. And it was hard, right? The first month, it was hard to make friends, even though like I was, right, the super popular girl, like the athletic girl growing up in Hong Kong. I was part of the student council, in fifth grade when we started doing that. And all this to say, I found myself needing to figure out how to make friends. How do I connect with people who are seemingly very much not like me, or they perceive me as not like them at all?
Mm.
Literally, it was two worlds completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. At least right in the 90s, right? Ohio in the 90s was I mean, it was a different world than it is now, but it's certainly very vastly different than what I grew up with in British Hong Kong. And so all this to say, Richard, it was out of survival instincts that I started really studying and looking to crack the code on how do I build bridges better, faster? How do
Mm.
I um, position myself as someone that would feel safe and familiar, or like let me highlight those areas that would help me appear more similar to these guys and gals, right, 11-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they're tough critics, right? So sure you personally experienced. So the studying, the observations, the scientific method that I employ to crack the code started many, many, many moons ago. And it was at that pivotal juncture in my life where I became so hungry for information about how do I do this better? How do I establish bridges with other people who are seemingly not similar to me or me to them? Um, how do I do this better, faster, more?
Fascinating. I think that the fact that you've clearly reflected on this and you've got this pivotal point where you had to come into a completely new environment, you didn't have any of the kind of strengths that you could apply immediately and the patterns that you could apply immediately. But then you analyzed that and realized there was actually a bunch of things that were the same, as well as some things that you had to adapt. I'm just wondering what the things that you found that were the same and which things did you need to adapt?
Well, the first element that I noticed, so I really started observing like what matters to these people, like what makes them tick, right, to use your language, what delighted them, what didn't delight them. So I really became an anthropologist of sorts, right? Kids in Hamilton County, 11-year-olds, right, 12-year-olds in Hamilton County, like what made them tick.
Yeah.
And it was interesting in that family. So family, right? I value my family, right? I cherish my family, and they did too. And so it was really leaning into those things that I saw were important to them and highlighting, right? Really like even just inviting friends and their parents over, or right, like literally asking if I could join, someone's Shabbat dinner for example, like really ingratiate myself to not only the person I want to become friends with, but their family, right? Those around them. And really align to their family, traditions and practices. It's interesting. Like I saw a friend that I grew up in Cincinnati with not that long ago, a couple weeks ago. And like a lot of the memories I have of her and with her involve her parents. Like literally, I'll be like, "Oh, like, does your mom still drive that car? Like, is your mom still doing this? Right? What about your dad?" Like, right? Like, it was just like one of those like again, just like ingrained memories, right? Um I think I really integrated into people's families, right? Really aligned to kind of how their families work and come together. Like one of my, it's really funny. Another friend, like, she's like, my mom keeps asking about you. Like, so that was a bridge that I saw, like, as a way to just, if nothing else, show curiosity about their lives. And I think that curiosity is what has led to longevity in the field that I'm in. Right. In that, right, sales, right, can be a tough subject matter, or it could be seen as a yucky discipline. But I go, actually, like, I get to practice curiosity every time that I interact with someone new or a prospective client or a right, networking contact. So family, really finding those hooks, if you will. And I hate to use that word because it
Yeah.
seems very predatory, but nevertheless, it's how building those emotional bridges. And I kind of went to their sweet spot, which is their family, right? What they do with their families. And so that was one element. I would say that so I'm a big foodie coming from British Hong Kong. Like I grew up eating all kinds of cuisine. So I really appeal to those that had that same level of curiosity about global cuisine. So I'm actually about to see another friend in New York later this week. And we bonded over our curiosities of different world cuisines. And so whenever we visit each other, we try a new cuisine or visit a restaurant that is of the culture that that represents something that we want to learn more about or had just visited, right, the country of. So like being a foodie, which was not a term that existed in the 90s yet. But I would say like finding my fellow foodies to, and to be a part of their tribe was very um very high energy for me, very authentic to me, as well as it was very generative too.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Um, let's think about the people who will be watching this. So when you're imagining the type of people that this topic around, garnering the attention and the engagement and interest of people that they want to speak to, who comes to mind?
So I think of people in terms of thinking styles.
Okay.
So there are four primary thinking styles that I've seen emerge, or I would say primary thinking styles. So we're not just monolithic in any shape or form. Yeah, I would say I tend to observe people through the lens of these four primary thinking styles. And so I think about your audience and how they themselves are probably vision driven type thinking style, right? Um, Given the fact that most of them are innovative, right? They're big picture thinkers. They are forward thinking leaders themselves, right? They want to see what's possible or what else is possible. So I think about that that elements of their primary thinking style, and right, the clients that they're looking to engage more with probably sit in a similar quadrant. However, their roles might in involve more process orientation or data orientation or people orientation. So by based on who they are as individuals, they're likely similar to your audience members in that they're forward thinking visionaries or vision led primary thinking style type people. And the by the sheer fact that most of their solution sets, right, their product offerings are probably solving for something that's new or emerging, they need to land with people who are also vision driven, Yet again, right, they might, again, by the requirements of their role or their company or their function or just the industry that they're in, might have a secondary thinking style that is maybe oftentimes either overlooked entirely or over indexed on. So that's where I see some potential opportunities to unlock some aha moments or additional aha moments for your audience member realm. But let me pause. Does that resonate with you, Richard?
It certainly does. I think that what it makes me think of is what are the other styles? So, and like, so if we're talking about visionary people, obviously a lot of these people are maybe, they are founders or executives, maybe salespeople in early stage startups that they've been drawn to this big dream to change the world. And either because they had frustration with how things were, or because they just want something bigger. But no one joins a 3 million ARR business for it to stay at 3 million ARR. And no
Hmm.
founder goes all in on an idea where they're going to take, zero fixed income, unless they're trying to create something that's really meaningful. And they're selling this idea that they can help people in a better way than they've ever been served before because they're doing
Hmm.
it in a better way.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, when you're thinking about the other things that people over index on or completely miss,
Hmm.
what are you thinking of?
So let me share with you the other thinking styles. So I quickly reference those. So let me pause and go through each of them linearly. So vision led thinking style is one of the four. The others would be data led or data dominant thinking style. Process led or process dominant thinking style would be the third. And then people centric or people led or driven
Yeah.
um, thinking style would be the fourth and last quadrant, if you will, that I tend to start to categorize people around, and which is something that I do want to talk about, right? How our brains are ever trying to categorize people. So there's a fundamental brain science principle here that a lot of us in doing prospecting miss or overlook altogether or aren't even aware of. So I'm going to get back to that in just a moment. So when I think about how um, a lot of times when we're doing prospecting, might just look at someone's role, right, or their title, right? So most BDRs, for example, get a list of people, first name, last name, title, or company title, email address, phone number, right? And so, yet a lot of times, their title may not represent their primary thinking style. So, in the case of, let's say, the seller is looking to engage with a CFO. Now, I think we can make some safe assumptions that a CFO is probably going to be data driven, if not dominant, right? So, data, numbers, like proof points, evidence, right? Pieces of evidence that can be proven, right, and quantified would be appealing to someone in that function or in that role. However, if this is a CFO, like to your point, in a right, really innovative company, right, mission driven, right, big picture, like they're trying to change the world, there might be a value that's even more pertinent to this particular individual that we haven't even right come to awareness around or pay heed to. And so I just really think about how, and this is really the core topic that I want to discuss with you in service of those that are listening. Really, this notion that when we are approaching people that aren't familiar with us yet, we have to highlight the points of similarity
Mm.
much more so. And a lot of times, those points of similarity can emerge from the way that we look at the world, aka thinking styles. So even though I'm not a CFO, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an accountant by trade. However, if a CFO who might be data driven but is in a company or at a firm or in a business that is right forward looking, or at least right their counterparts are forward looking, those around them are big picture, right, vision driven, vision dominant people, chances are there's a share value there in terms of right what new possibility can we unlock, what is a new contrast, right? New reality that we could strive towards together. So really figuring out what are those additional tidbits that could promote the likeness, right? Between the two sides. So that's where I do want to start sharing the thoughts and a hypothesis I've tested out over 25 years now, in that a lot of sellers approach these new contacts wanting to be liked or be liked, right, by this new contacts, this prospective client. Yet the pivot that I want to offer all of us to think more about is focus less on being liked, but really highlighting where you're alike.
Mm.
And that gets into the in-group, out-group dynamics that I'll be happy to discuss more. But let me pause before I continue. Is this resonating?
It is. It's triggering lots of things. I've not heard the thinking styles defined in the way that you did it before, but it makes me think of a couple of sort of styles that I had learned, which other people might have learned instead, which is, the whole red, green, blue, yellow
Yes.
personality types.
Yes. Yes.
And then another way I learned it was extrovert, amiable, pragmatic, and analyst.
Uh-huh.
And so everyone's like, and everyone's done Myers-Briggs and Jung and and DISC and all these things. What I'm wondering is, when you're thinking about this way of people are thinking, because a lot of people will have like done Myers-Briggs and they've got their, I'm an ENTJ, but then they don't really use it again. Why do you think that a lot of this stuff people conceptually understand but then just don't use?
They're not going to the level of interaction, human to human interaction, right? So I said this to someone the other day. I said, when we are operating in silo, when we're just sitting at home, right, in our chaise lounge, we are probably the most calm, optimized, authentic version of us. However, is when there's a stimulus, a trigger point of some kind, some input, right, into the ecosystem, that's when these quirks, right, these attributes start to emerge, right? So I think about how thinking styles, they are comparative for a clear purpose, right? Is to go, hey, there is a contrast that needs to be bridged or at least understood better, right? If there are two opposing thinking styles at play, and it's really about the language that these individual thinking styles would primarily focus on, right? So it's about our expression of that style, right, of thinking that matters most. So someone asked me the other day, so she's like, I know that I'm a hugely, people-led, people-centric thinking style leader. So I'm trying to break through to someone whom I think is more, process-oriented. So like, how do I break the ice? And I said, well, let's go to the chart, right? To go like, what makes these people tick? Like, what actually would be brain friendly in terms of word choices, phrasing, right? Your verbal expression, and nonverbal as well. But like, let's go to the chart to go like, these are the things that would delight or calm the brain down, right? Based on this thinking style. Now, let's also go to the next page, which is, right, the perceived or potential perceived threats by that particular thinking style.
Nah.
And so right there, her love language is when people share something authentic, intimate, right? Very vulnerable, right? That's her love language. But I go, that process oriented, process led person, like fuzziness, touchy feely, right? Things that are undefined, ambiguous, that is going to send a signal to that brain that this is potentially a threat. Like, I don't want this. Like, I want to move away from this. So it's either fight or flight or freeze, right? In some people's cases, that's when like literally you start to see like the color drain from their face, or they start to disengage. They literally pull back, or like literally be like, they kind of mentally check out, and you can see the energy, right, deflate. So all that's to say, Richard, I do think about how at the end of the day, it's not just to know like what you're about. It's really noticing how that gets expressed, right? Those elements get expressed in the context of human to human interaction, right? Conversations, messages being received or sent, And really knowing that each thinking style has its own green flags and red lights.
Green flags and red lights. Okay, I like it. When you say green flags and red lights, and you've mentioned a couple of other things around brain friendly,
Mhm,
love language.
mhm.
Take me into your world of what that all means.
Yeah. So in the world of sales excellence, commercial success, prospecting, business development, I think about how all that has to be triangulated in a maybe 3 paragraph email, right? Or a, 15-second voicemail message that is going to invite back the response that you want. So a lot of us, I play a lot of racket sports, so I think about how a lot of us in sales only worrying about our own power, right? So like let's say our own physical abilities, but in tennis, actually, the fastest way to win, and this is especially true in pickleball, the fastest way to win is to not only play into your strengths but know how to set yourself up, right, against your opponent. And I know that's very predatory language, so I'm gonna come back to this
You
in just a moment.
Yeah,
But the idea is that it's not just like what you're able to put out, but to know what to anticipate from the other side. So if you know that your opponent has a really strong forehand, should you not do? Keep
yeah,
putting the ball to their forehand in
yeah,
their strike zone, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yet a lot of times, we in sales, only think about like how trustworthy we sound. But that's in the eye of the beholder, by the way. So right, or how likable we might appear, how friendly we sound. Yet we have not completed the thought, right? We haven't fully finished the formula, right? We only have variable A, maybe B, but we haven't figured out like what that's going to actually generate. So I just think about how like all of this is to right all the work that we do at BrainSells Global is to help reduce um the noise around what actually will unlock the behaviors you want to see from the other side, the kinds of responses that you want to see more from the other side by pivoting or changing or adapting what you put into that equation.
yeah. Okay, it makes a lot of sense. I think what I see as the big difference here is that you're doing it in the context of selling, and
Correct.
often within startups where they don't have like the benefit of coming from Salesforce, so everyone knows who you are, and there's a whole art and a science to selling.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of the tools that people use are just these massively complicated things that people try to adapt to it, but they have to like make that leap themselves. Like when you read that you are an ENTP, you have to then try and like work out what that means. And often because people don't have that way of doing things to, like you say, turn that into the first line of an email or a text message or a face-to-face conversation or a phone
Right.
call, they
Yeah.
just it stays in the I know this stuff, but I'm not using it kind of category.
Precisely that, right? So I have a model or paradigm that I teach, certainly new sellers, those in BD. But this really can apply to anybody wanting to put forth more engaging, higher yield prospect messages, right? So, and it's called the SCAN model, SCAN. And so it is about not only triangulating your message to the green flags, right? That I talked about earlier, um, in terms of like what would most align and resonate with that type of thinking style. So the S in SCAN stands for same. So we really have to ask ourselves, how are we the same, or how could this person perceive me as at least similar, if not the same
Sure.
as me?
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times thinking styles can give us those clues as to what verbiage to use. So again, right, we might inherently know that we're like them, we're similar to them, or they to us, yet how we express that, right? The word choices that we use, the framing of ideas, that's where the rubber literally meets the road. And so I think about how you know, based on brain science, we know exactly how to do that. We know what works and what doesn't work, or what could work better, what could generate better results. So just even dialing into that notion of like the first thing you should highlight is how you're similar, because it breaks down the perceived threat level, or it reduces the perceived threat level by the virtue of us trying to engage with someone who is at a different company than we are, probably, right? We are obviously in different roles. So even a founder to, right, a CFO or CTO, just by virtue of what we do daily, right, what our major is, as I call it, what our professional major is, that is already positioning us in the out group. So the trick here is to reduce the perceived potential threat by the other side, and to position us at least within a winning shot of being perceived as a potential in-group member. So the S part of scan is really crucial, yet that's where a lot of people miss the mark completely, right? They don't even think about, how am I positioning myself to be deemed at least similar, if not the same as the person I'm trying to reach. And there's a lot of research about how when we perceive someone as the same or similar to us, we feel the same level of pain as they would. So literally, like, there was a study done of basically the person being studied would look at a number of images of different people of different demographic
Yeah.
having like a bruise on their face, or like a black eye, or some cut right to their face.
Yeah.
And the images that represented the person being studied, the images that that reflect an image of a person most similar to that person, when they saw that bruise or cut or black eye, they literally had a heightened emotional reaction. So that's how deep-seated this notion of wanting to find people who are similar to us, that's how deeply seated that is.
Fascinating, because it's like people say people buy from people who they know, like, and trust, and are like them. But I think
Well,
most
actually,
people,
it's like them first. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But it's
Be
the
like
last
them.
thing, right?
Actually,
It's
yeah,
like
right.
someone's
Yes.
added it on, isn't it? And
Correct.
actually, what people do is they go, well, the first thing I'm going to do if I'm going to try and garner the attention of someone is I'm going to go and do a bunch of research about them, so I can show them that I know them and that I've done it's personalized. What's your view on the whole personalization debate?
So I absolutely believe that research should be done. It's obvious when someone hasn't done their homework, right? Like, I'm sure one of the messages that you deleted or ignored, or you might have opened it, but then you're like, nah, that's not it. They probably didn't do their homework. So homework is sort of the table stakes, right? Like, you gotta have that to just sit at the table, right? Or right, like, you gotta have that just to be within the same court, right, as your opponent in
Yeah,
tennis, right?
it's
Would
your
be like,
profession, right?
it is
Yeah.
literally your work. It is your profession. Yeah, day at the office, right? However, I think that's where the human elements, right? The humanistic part of doing prospecting is still so relevant today, and needs to be even enhanced in that, right, similarity is perceived, right? It's not generated by an algorithm. uh, right? So that's where um, the reasoning behind, right, the research, us literally going, huh, okay, so I researched this about Richard, right? I know this and that about him. How do I express myself in such a way that will help him see that I am similar to him? So this is now taking facts, right? Factoids, statements, truths, let's call them that, right? About somebody, and going, okay, let me put this through my own filter as a human being, going, what might be those resonating tidbits that will help augment or highlight the similarity between us two, right? That is still woefully under indexed on. And most people don't even ask that question, right? So, and so that's where I see great opportunity for us to go, hey, we have knowledge. And we talked about this even right before we started. There's knowledge, yet there's not wisdom, or the wisdom is low, right? In quantity, or it's misapplied. So we have knowledge about somebody. We've done our research. We seemingly know them, or at least know facts about them. But how do we take it to the next level so that we are helping the other side take down those walls as quickly as possible? Which is really the whole point of doing great prospecting, right? Is that we got to lower those walls, right? Lower the threat level so that they would even be cognitively primed to hear us out, to look at what we have put forth, right? As an idea, right? In a message.
So how am I the same as the S? What's the C?
C is common challenge. So, um, right, seemingly, right, I may not have a lot of similarities with a CPA, right, who is a CFO at a company. I'm not CPA by trade. I didn't go to school for accounting, right? I don't run numbers, at least not financial numbers, every day that I'm running the business. However, there are probably some common challenges, right? So I might, really lean into, say, in the S part of scan, I might highlight if we're both in a discipline or at a business that is very forward looking, very innovative, trying to solve for something that most people have just learned to live with, but we're, you know, proposing an alternative, a new contrast state that could help everybody, right? Be better, do more, and just or approach something that has long existed a little bit differently. And so after that level, I would probably go to a common challenge that both sides likely would need to grapple with. So this could be as macro or as micro as you can make it. And that's where the research comes in, right? About the company, about that specific industry, about what do CFOs care about today, right? And to go like, let's triangulate and pinpoint one or two common challenges or challenges that we both might want to solve for, might grapple with, might see as a barrier to the kind of success, to the kind of new reality, new contrast state that we want to help people get to. So that's the C part. Should I go continue with A
Yeah,
and
yeah,
N?
absolutely.
Okay,
And we can keep
fantastic.
going.
Yeah. So A is the aha moment. So, right, a lot of people would say sell on pain. I go, well, that's great for maybe like 90 seconds, but most people need to come off of that threat, right? To be like, oh my gosh, that is painful. Most people will naturally want to resolve that pain, right? They want to move away from it, reduce it, get rid of it entirely. So that's where the A part of scan comes into, in that we need to offer them some relief, but in the form of an aha moment that pertains to something that we both share some similarity on and a common challenge. So this is now us literally using the research and formulating a a piece of communication or a set of points to communicate, right, how we are in fact not only similar but here to set you up for success. And so the A part of scan starts to move us into like how we might potentially add to your thinking. How, yes, we're very similar in these ways. We see common challenges in that way or in those ways, yet we have something that would interrupt that pattern, that existing paradigm, right? Something new, different, or more that could set you up for success. And then, last but not least, is to highlight that, and this is most pertinent for those that are probably vision led, but I call it new possibility. But it's just really like, what is that new reality that we're offering this person to even consider? So we're moving from right? Breaking down like we are part of your in-group. And to prove that, let me share with you something that our in-group, right, would think about, would be thinking about, would need to think more about, and then something that would delight or uplift or shift the mindset or thinking of our fellow in-group members, right? That's the aha moment. And then like what could be the new possibility for those of us who are in this in-group. So that's the scan model or method, if you will.
You've mentioned in group and out group a number of times. Tell us what that means.
It is the way that our brain categorizes others. So literally, we are the byproducts of our ancestors who back in the day, they had to literally pay attention to who's in our tribe and who's not in our tribe, right? People not in our tribe means probably a threat of some kind. Very primitive lizard brain based, right? Like literally back here, right? That's like the oldest part of our human brain, the most ancestral part, I should say. So it is very much the way our brains are primed to spot others, and I know that's a very controversial framing right now in the political order of things, world affairs. However, it is very much ingrained in all of us. We humans, our human brains are primed to sort things and people into buckets so that we can make quicker decisions, right? So in this case, literally, we do this unconsciously, by the way. We go out into the world, right? Here it is on the streets of Chicago. And I'm literally going like, unless it's a face that I recognize, they're all strangers, right? Stranger danger was ingrained in all of us, probably by the age of 4. So all that's to say, it's the brain's way, the brain mechanism of just categorizing people. So that's what it really is. Yet, in today's world, we have so many more tools and resources at our disposal to help with decision making about people. Right? That extend beyond this basic binary in-group, out-group dynamic. Yet in-group, out-group dynamic or the categorization of whether somebody is in-group, like of our tribe, aka, or out-group, not of our tribe, that is still very much rooted in all of us. That is literally the default state that we're all operating against.
Yeah, and we won't be able to change it, right? It's designed to help us. So you're talking about
Keep us
utilizing
safe.
that
Yes.
in the strength, right? You're saying
Right.
actually, if I can understand this principle, which is I guess the standard is I am an out group. When I'm speaking to someone new, like I should assume I'm out group. So my job is to consciously think through what would make me in group.
Correct. Precisely that.
So
Precisely that.
could you give us an example of like, so let's say that there's a founder listening to this and they're going, right, we want to go and get the attention of people in our ICP because we have this thing that we think can really help them. How could they start to utilize scan
Hmm.
in the way
Yeah.
that they go and engage the market?
Yeah, a couple of things. So, I think about how for certain founders out there, you're at a point of growth and maturation in your business where you're probably bringing in full-time sellers. So right there, we have to enable and empower these sellers to unlock the S part of scan, right? To build points of similarity with your target audience, your ICP. And most of these ICPs are probably more senior, right? More experienced. Just like right, they've been around longer. They've been around the block more times than maybe your new seller coming in, maybe, having only 3 to 5 years under their belt as an account executive somewhere else, yet they're really attracted by the opportunity to grow or build or grow something with you. So right there, we have to empower the seller in this case to build those points of similarity to somebody who is, by all accounts, of a higher status, right? They are coming from a different experience level. So we have to absolutely curate and create and help right, the seller create those points of connectivity and similarities. So right there, and a lot of times when we're transitioning from founder-led selling to right seller-led selling, we forget that, right, just because we've been doing this well ourselves, like we embody our product. We are the products, right? Our brain is the genius behind the products. A lot of times we forget that there needs to be a step here uh, around empowerment and enablement of the seller. Because now the seller is representing you for all intents and purposes. So we have to highlight the things that are in fact replicable and repeatable based on your selling style and system. And at the same time, add or bolster their probability of being seen as similar to these higher status, more experienced type leaders. So right away, that's like the first thing I usually do when I hear, hey, like I've been selling as the founder or co-founder, we're ready to bring in someone new. My first question is, can you show me what you want your new seller to send out by way of a prospect message? Show me that. And that literally could make or break uh, your sales. So that's the first step I would counsel. And then if you are still wanting to lead sales on your own as a founder or co-founder, I would absolutely think about, right, especially if you're coming to a point where you need to expand your network beyond friends and family, like you literally need to get clients from beyond your first and second degree connections. Really think about your approach with third degree plus, right? Third degree and beyond contacts using some of the things that we talked about today. So don't assume that just because you have founder in your title, right? You might have a certain degree or a couple degrees, or you went to the same school as they did. Um, those are they're kind of common practice now, if you will. So this is right using scan and really dialing into those additional points of similarity and thinking through the C and the A and the N will definitely set you apart. And the good news is, you just have to do this much more to see this much more coming back. So let me pause. Does that resonate?
It does. It does. I'm wondering what questions they could ask. So let's say you've got a founder who is building their team, right? Let's make it a really specific scenario. So let's say that this is a founder and they've got a head of sales in, and the head of sales is building a team of, let's say, 5 reps.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like 2 now down from the founder.
Right.
What are some of the questions they can ask to find some of the S, the C, and the A, to be able to build it so they can go to market?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So, um, even in, let's say, the CFO scenario, right? Let's just ask questions of the new seller or the incoming, more junior sellers, let's call them that, right? Tell me what you think goes on in a CFO's day. Just even start there, right? Don't assume there's similarity or connectivity until we gather some facts. So this is where the research again absolutely is paramount. I'm just saying a lot of us stop short, right? We stop there.
Yeah.
We start and stop there, right?
Yeah.
Yet the opportunity is to continue, right? So now it's to go, what do you think a CFO even does across the day, across the week? And that's where the research comes in to the forefront. So a lot of sellers, they may not have paused long enough to know or think about even or consider what is the reality of our target audience, in this case CFOs. I oftentimes will also ask questions of what beliefs might we share. So now that we know a little bit about their day, we know a little bit about their operating reality, what beliefs, what ideas might the two sides have in common? So now really going to believe. And there's this notion that, like, hey, underneath the title, underneath the function, under the leader packaging, right, there's a human being that has a number of values and belief systems that guide who they are and how they show up in the world. So let's just consider, like, what beliefs might we share with them? And again, this is where the research becomes really crucial in that, right, if you just do surface level research, you probably won't be able to answer that question very thoughtfully anyway, right? You might be able to make some stuff up, right? However, right, even something like, oh, well, they seem to, coach soccer on the weekends or football, sorry, in the UK. So they seem to coach soccer/football on the weekends. Okay, what about that? Is the underlying emotional driver? What is their belief? Oh, well, I see other posts on LinkedIn that this person really believes in shaping the future generation. They want to give back to the community, right? They're philanthropic in that way. They really want to be the mentor, role model for those coming up behind. Fantastic, right? Right there. What can we leverage from that body of research or tidbits about them? And then from there, we absolutely can go into a number of other terrains. For example, what would be something, again, an aha moments, right? So, what is something that they've been just like executing on, operating on, almost on autopilot? So, what would be an aha moment that would disrupt that,
Uh,
right? Or at least interrupt the pattern long enough for them to come up and be like, huh, I hadn't thought about that, right? So it's generating attention by disrupting an existing autopiloted pattern, if that makes sense. So and then from there, right, we can absolutely think about really what is an insight, what is a new reality potentially for them. So, but I would oftentimes just start asking like, what is their reality? What do you know about their reality? And what believes, like what drives a human to do what they do? And if you can answer those two buckets of questions thoughtfully, you can usually proceed pretty brilliantly from there. So that's why I say like just a little bit extra can yield quite a bit more.
yeah, because it's what most people do is they find out some stuff that they got in common, and then they talk about it, right? So, but then I don't think they really take that into the conversation. So
No.
it's like, someone might say to me, "Hey, saw you've got Miami Dolphins helmet in your background. By the way, the reason I have curated this very deliberate set of things in my background is to give
Mhm.
people really easy talking points. So someone can go, "Oh, is that a Lando Norris McLaren helmet?" I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to talk about Miami Dolphins. I'd love to talk about this author that's one of my good friends. Talk about Dan Priestley. If they notice something that you make it really easy for people to like find things in
Yes.
common with you.
Precisely
But I
that.
think a lot of the time
Exactly
people
that.
just go, "Oh, you went to Bournemouth University. Oh, I noticed that you're in Bournemouth, or I noticed that you're a founder." It's like this very superficial layer, and then whatever the response, they then get into their standard talk track.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just
Uh-huh.
wondering, like, how you think about how they can, rather than doing what everyone else does, which is surface level commonalities and then generic response.
So I'm going to give an example. So my background on Zoom usually is of my bookcase where I have my Chicago Marathon badge number like framed. Now, this is the crazy part, Richard, and this has been studied over a 13-year period of time. So I literally every time someone says something about my marathon badge, I put a ticker. So far, we're like looking at single digit percentages of people who are pitching to me who ask about the marathon badge. So even like awareness, it's not there. Now, granted, um, during COVID, I started to use the blur or whenever the blur function came
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
I started to use that more. So the opportunity to see the badge has reduced, but nevertheless, in the prime years of Zoom or Skype back then, or WebEx, even Teams, when the blur function was not available, um, I mean, I'm talking like maybe 1 in 20, 1 in 15 people would ask about the marathon badge. Now, from there, what I noticed was most people just go, "Oh, I see that you ran a marathon." Yeah, I did. And right, like instead of asking like what led you to do it, or how did it feel, right, or what do you like most about running races? Nobody asked. Nobody, literally nobody. Still zero. The ticker on that front is still zero.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So right there, I just kind of go, how interesting, right? So people, again, they want to show that they know me or care about me, yet it stops right there. Like, all it would have taken to really know me, or at least get to know me a bit better, or to find points of similarity would have been to ask that underlying question: what led you to run the race?
Mm.
Funny story. There's a really hilarious story about why I even signed up in the first place, but nobody bothered to ask. Now, if they had asked and they learned that story, they would have so many gems to work with. Instead of going, wow, you must really love running. No, actually, I don't. I effing hate it. So, but then, like, most people, again, like, I'm giving them a clue that, like, this is a contrast, right? Or a departure from who I really am. There's a story there. And most people don't go like, there must be a story there. Right? They don't even do that. So it's like I am giving you, like, literally, like, as in we say in tennis, I am giving you the chance to put this away. Few people sees it. None, actually, zero.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting. Do you think it's because people are lazy, or do you think it's because they just never been trained to look for it?
I think it's a number of things happening, Richard. So one is, and I will have to give credence to this, it is scary to talk to someone you don't know. So our brains are usually in overdrive anyway. So when we're approaching someone we don't know, maybe this is right only my third day on the job. Right? Like there are a number of things that could make us cognitively taxed. So I don't want to say lazy, but it is laziness, but out of overwhelm. So
Yeah.
that inertia is not for inertia's sake, right? Is that most people, they just can't get there because like they're just overwhelmed, right? There's too much going on in the brain, there's so much noise, right? Overload. So they can't even like be calm enough and clear enough to take the conversation in a direction that might open them up to uncertainty, which is the second point. So a lot of people are not good with uncertainty, and the brain likes certainty. We want to know the outcomes before things happen, right? And some more than others even. And so I just kind of go, a lot of times when we are stressed, under duress, when we're overwhelmed, what do? We tend to go to things that we know that give us comfort. Usually it's talking about ourselves, right? What we know, what we want to talk about, what we've planned to talk about, right? What we've prepped on. So anything that deviates from that plan, from the path to certainty, um, right, would be very challenging and like just like taxing, right, on the brain. And so a lot of people shy away from it, and the irony, right, in that whole thing is the more you're open to curiosity, the more comfortable or at least tolerant you are of uncertainty, which then actually helps you connect better, right? Find those points of similarity and start breaking down those walls better, faster. So all that's to say, it's I think a lot of people are just cognitively taxed because this is something that is not natural for most people, and they get into a state of overwhelm, cognitive overload, and then they just like literally fall apart from there.
So if founders have got reps in their team, or heads of sales have got reps in their teams that aren't used to doing this, so they're
Mhm,
at capacity and they don't feel as comfortable, what are some of the
mhm.
things that you recommend that they can do to build that muscle and create the spare capacity?
Yeah, so preparation, right? So a lot of us come into these networking conversations, perspective conversations, thinking that we're good to go because we know the subject matter, right? We know our products, we know our services, right? The scope of what we're great at. However, the prep really should be about coming up with these thought provoking, dialogue inviting questions. So, right there, even the prep that we advise our sales people to do has to be different in order to get back different, right? So, a lot of times, and I've seen this over the years, a lot of heads of sales or founders, they'll be like, okay, I want my reps to practice the pitch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They'll be like, I need them to drill through these 10 slides. Okay, well, all right. So we are shoring them up on what you want to talk about or want them to talk about, right? Or what they might want to talk about even. However, this does not take into account what might surface from the other side, right? So it's really about rehearsing all the dynamics that could emerge from the interaction itself or within the confines of the interaction. And Q&A, right? Like most of us, right? Even if we do the most perfect pitch, someone will be like, I have a question about that, right? Why not anticipate that? Why not prepare the Q&A, literally, right? The Q&A portion, or just even like build up the dialogue inviting, thought provoking, ideation generating questions that will set you up for less of that cognitive overload, right? So now it's a shared own, right? A co-owned process where you're not just standing up there and talking at somebody and then someone just like firing back at you, right? Like a ping pong game. Now it's like really co-created dialogue and exchange of ideas and insights and possibilities.
I love that. It makes me think about a number of things. In fact, before I jump into what I think about, co-created, you've mentioned this a couple of times. You mentioned it in our first conversation. What do you mean by co-created?
It is whereby two sides come together to generate and produce something that is greater than the parts. So it really comes down to 5 key motions, is what we call it here at BrainSells. So it really is about joint discovery. It's about co-developing the next steps. It's about iterative execute. Well, before that, it's collaborative iteration and ideation, and then a coordinated execution. So it's really about these steps and motions that um, bind the two sides together so that there's mutual um, success. There are shared goals, and it starts from like literally doing joint discovery, where both sides are exchanging tidbits, right? That they can input into the collective ecosystem to again, with the intention of producing something greater than what each side could produce on its own. So
Fascinating.
that's how we define it. Yeah.
We had Gallagher on the podcast, and he talks about one of his sort of principles is that discovery is not for you, it's for them.
Correct. It's facilitated discovery. That's what we call. So we call it joint discovery for all intents and purposes. Yet for the other side to want to learn about you, you have to facilitate that, right? You have to prime the brain in the room, right? All the brains in the room to want to do discovery. And so a lot of times, right, like, I have sellers say like, well, they didn't really ask any questions.
Yeah.
Then which tells me, I'm like, well, did you prime did you prime the conversation with questions that role model the kind of discovery that you want to do? Well, I mean, I asked some discovery questions. I'm like, that didn't answer my question. Right? Those are two different things. Like you might have checked the box off on like, oh, these are the BANT, right? BANT questions I asked, but that's for qualifying. That's for you. That's not, there's nothing about building the ecosystem or the environment or the components that would lead to a shared motion of discovering about each other, right? Being curious about each other, inquiring about each other. Like you just kind of checked off the box. You literally just like threw balls like in dodgeball, right? You just threw
Yeah.
balls at people,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Hoping they land somewhere.
That's what they're taught, right? And then it's like, if it's not working, make more dials. I'm just wondering, which is the way they do it, right? But I'm just wondering, like, if we get practical for a second. So to create this like facilitated discovery, what are some of the practical things that reps can do to turn that discovery from a very, I've got 20 questions I need to ask you, to be, this is a joint thing that we're going to do together really for your benefit? What are some of the practical things they can do?
Yeah, it's a two-step process there, Richard. So the first is I would absolutely encourage the reps to go to ChatGPT and ask. So again, if using the CFO example resonates, say what are the 5 key strategic initiatives or priorities that most CFOs in my primary vertical are thinking about, right? Just go and like study that, right? Like what are they thinking about? What must they know about, or what's emerging for them? What might be on their horizon? Just to get the facts, right? And then from there, really build some thinking questions. So the other day I literally said to a chief sales officer, so I showed him our hypotheses. So we're building a 24/7 365 biz dev partner sales coach for those in business development and full-time selling roles. And I have my hypothesis, right? I did my research, yet I also came to the table to go, are these the top 3 strategic initiatives or priorities that you're thinking about for the rest of the year, for the second half of the year? He goes, yes. And I go, could you rank them in importance for me, right? Starting with 1 is most important. So he did that for me. Then I asked the question, right? So like I've shown you my hypotheses. You've told me what matters to you most. What are your thoughts about the connectivity between these hypotheses and your major primary objective for the rest of the year? He goes, oh my gosh, I have so much to say about that, right? So right there, I literally just go like, tell me what matters to you. And I literally asked like, how do you think about this? How would you approach this? I mean, I know how I would approach it, but that's not the point of the conversation. I want to know how he would approach it. And he gave us so many gems. And right there, it really just predicated on what, 2 questions? 2, right, very straightforward, yet brain-friendly questions that generated back to me, all these great gems. So, yet it did have to start with me doing some configuring, some, right, ideating, some researching, and doing my homework to go like, what even matters to these people? Like,
Yeah.
let me figure that out, and then come to the table with a thought starter, right? It's very hard for someone to create from a blank slate. Like, what are your top 5 concerns? Right? Most people kind of go, right? Unless they just came from a meeting about that, they probably have to go, let me think about that. However, if you give them something to base their answer or thought, um, their ideas on, it is so much more brain friendly. It really shows that you're setting them up for success, and it reduces the cognitive overwhelm and overload, right? So now they can just like literally rank the numbers, right? 1, 2, 3. And then from there, expand the thinking a little bit more, open the aperture just a little bit more, right? I'm not asking him to come up with a manifesto, right? From a blank slate. It's to go, hey, like, just tell me what, out of these options, what matters to you the most? And how would you think about approaching this or that?
I love it. I love it. So Sylvia, I could definitely talk to you all day. So maybe we have to do a second podcast. But you mentioned that you just released this thing into the wild, which is incredibly exciting. So exciting that you've delayed your Portugal plans to go and launch this thing. It's that important to you.
It is that important, yes.
So let's say that someone's listening to this and they're going, "Oh, that sounded really interesting. What you mentioned that thing. Tell me a bit more about what it is you've created to help people."
Yeah, so the application is called Ask Alex Pro. And the idea behind Ask Alex Pro is that we all should have at our fingertips brain friendly business development and prospect engagement tips and tricks. Yet, that is not as fully democratized as I would like. So I decided to put together something that literally is accessible 24/7, 365. So you don't have to wait until I'm awake, either in Lisbon or Chicago or Hong Kong, to talk to me or someone like me to get the best, most brain friendly sales practices to generate the kinds of commercial success outcomes that you want to see. More importantly, it's really helping all of us get to those aha moments about what would unlock the desired buyer responses and behaviors that we all seek, right, in doing business development. So it's codifying and democratizing access to those knowledge points, and more importantly, those toolkits, those high yield practices, and putting an application that will lead people to those higher yield outcomes through this always on business development, virtual business development partner and sales performance coach. So that's what this is uh, designed to be to affect. This is what it's called and why I delayed it, because I still see every day well, certainly on the receiving end of really low yield prospect messages, I go, something has to be done about the state like right now in terms of prospecting. I'm like, okay, like this has to stop. And so as a recipient, I want to see better come out of people who are trying to engage me. And as someone who teaches people how to build those bridges better, faster with their ideal client, future or current clients, I want to help them execute or adopt those healthier habits and behaviors better, faster too, so that the discipline at large is elevated. Like we're lifting the tide to lift all boats. That's the core mission behind Ask Alex Pro.
Amazing. And I would imagine, this is like not me trying to throw an objection your way or anything, but I would imagine that if you're a founder today, you've been offered a million different tools that claim to help salespeople sell better. And a sales rep, when they're logging on to Perplexity or ChatGPT, is seeing all of these custom GPTs that people have bought and used. Why is this one that they should consider?
I'm so glad you asked that, Richard. So two things about why we do see this as the game changer or the differentiation in the market. One is this is an enclosed ecosystem of insights and proven practices. So instead of AI power, right, where the ChatGPT will go to the Internet of Things, right, like everything under the sun in the out there world. This is a contained ecosystem that the agents within Ask Alex Pro are asked to search from. And so the beauty of that approach is that, right, we literally focus the agents on the proven most high yield practices. So these are tried and true things. It is also based on neuroscience-based selling principles. So there is something that pervades through different sales methodologies, and it can also be adapted and localized to each organization's or each team's sales strategy, sales process, their own playbook. And actually, for our founding circle members, they get a customized, codified high performance playbook that goes into their version of Ask Alex Pro. So think of it as literally we are not only aligning people to the most brain-friendly business development or sales practices that will invite back the desired buyer responses and behaviors. We are saying that we could adapt all of that to your operating world, to your reality, to the kinds of clients that you want to acquire more faster. So we can literally extend or expand Ask Alex Pro for each client, each client organization that is signing up with their own genius, if you will, or their own proven practices, in addition to having the agents search from our database, our brains, on brain-friendly selling principles.
I love it. Okay, cool. Sign me up.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh my gosh, Richard. Welcome to the founding circle.
Amazing. We'll put links in the show notes. But Silvia, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your incredible perspective with us all.
Thank you for the thought-provoking questions, Richard. You're a tremendous interviewer. So kudos to you.
Getting there a little bit better every day, thinking differently about my thinking. But I'm glad I managed to bring out so much gold from you. So thank you. So for everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.